From the beautiful Finger Lakes region of upstate New York, this is the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. We take questions from anyone in the dental profession and discuss what it takes to win not only in dentistry, but in life. Business, leadership, relationships, parenting, health and wellness, money management, nothing is off limits on the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. I'm Jason Tenori, your host, and have over 20 years of experience to pull from. Learn from my mistakes and let me help you collapse time so you can become the best version of yourself. Yo, Dr. Jason here, the Dental Lighthouse Podcast. Excited to be with you. A couple quick things, a couple housekeeping items. I wasn't planning on saying this, but man, thank you so much for the 5-star reviews. I'm going to read one. I wasn't planning on doing this, but let's see here. I'll read a couple of them. From Theron77, great podcast. This has been so helpful for me as I try to become a better leader. I try to listen to all the episodes. Well, thank you so much, Theron77. Amazing podcast, great podcast for dentists and dental office business. Lots of practical information. I listen to the podcast every week. Thank you so much, Seth Taj. Amazing info, actionable and overall great stuff. So, again, so appreciative of you guys reaching out and giving me some 5-star reviews. If you feel that the content I'm sharing here is actionable and relevant, please share it with other people. And please leave me a 5-star review. The intentions of that is for this content to get in front of other dentists and other dental leaders and fulfill my purpose of just trying to do everything I can to collapse time for others so they can get to where they want to get to sooner than they would have without me. So that's the first housekeeping thing. Thank you for that. Please keep them coming. Second thing was really excited about our 4 Futures Challenge that's going to be starting in December. I'll do a whole podcast on 4 Futures again, but just keep an eye out for that. If you want to get information about that, reach out to me via email or text message. My contact information is at thedentallighthouse.com. We should have the entire program buttoned up in the next week or so, and we're going to do a dry run, an experimental run in December for a week. So we'll do it for 7 days. And I truly believe the benefits of these beta tests, for lack of a better term, because you think you're prepared until you actually get into the weeds. And then you're like, oh, I didn't realize this, or I didn't realize that. And I feel like sometimes when we wait till the first of the year to try some of these things without beta testing them, things go wrong after the first of the year, and then we just stop doing it. So if we could have like a 7-day dry run in December to kind of play around with the program, you'll learn a lot about yourself, what works, what doesn't. You'll pivot, you'll make some adjustments, and then you'll be really ready to go come January. So we're going to have information about the 4 Futures Challenge on the website. Reach out again via email, text message. And then what we'll probably do is on our Facebook group, our Dental Lighthouse Facebook group, we'll just have continual conversations throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month, supporting each other. And this is what I'm doing. This is what you're doing, stuff like that. There was one other thing I wanted to share with you guys. So let me think. There was the reviews. There was the Dental Lighthouse, the 4 Futures Challenge. Oh, and and a Black Friday event. So as you know, we've done an 8-week servant leadership course in the past. Every year we offer the course, and every year the material seems to get a little bit better, and I get a little bit more acclimated at presenting the material. Anyways, my assistant Kenzie has done a phenomenal job of recording all of the material, packaging it up in modules. I think there's 15 or 16 modules. And it's just really, again, I'm biased, but it's really relevant stuff. So if you're trying to become the best leader that you can be, or you're trying to help someone on your team become the best leader that they can be, we currently use this exact material in our own organization to grow leaders. We're putting on a November Black Friday sales event. It's like $500 off. So you can get all 16 modules, all the CE hours that go with it. for under a grand. So I can guarantee you that there's not better value in leadership content out there, uh, and I've looked for it. So if it's something that you're trying to up your leadership game, or you're trying to help some of your team members up their leadership game, or you're promoting someone into a leadership position, it's almost like a book club, right? Where you and your OM could watch a module a week, and then you meet at the end of the week and you discuss it, and you get on the same page, and then you move on to week two. So if you're looking for a playbook or a framework or a cookbook, I would encourage you to look into it. You can go access that at thedentallighthouse.com. So today I wanted to talk to you about a number of messages that I've been getting regarding budgeting for next year, and specifically staffing. And the question gets masqueraded different ways, but what people are basically asking me is, how do I control staff wages? Or am I overstaffed? Or am I producing enough? Or, some type of iteration of that question. And it's a super good one, right? And it's so nuanced because there's so many different factors. It depends on the type of dental office you're running, depends on if you're fee for service or state assisted or heavy PPO, depends on your skill set, depends on the competency of your people. So it depends on a lot of things. So what I'd like to do today is just give you some things to think about. Like you've heard me say before, maybe we just need to ask better questions. So let's look at it first from a productivity side, and then we'll look at it from an expense side. So, from a productivity side, these are some basic metrics that I need you to think about. Let's start with hygiene. Everybody has heard of the metric that a hygienist ideally is producing 3.3 times their W-2 wages, right? So, and I don't have a problem with that metric. I think it's unrealistic depending on the type of practice that you run. Like if you're a heavy PPO practice, it's going to be hard to get to 3.3. If you're in a area of the country where the hygiene wages have exploded, it's going to be hard to get that done. If both of those things are occurring, you're in a an area of the country where hygiene wages have exploded, and you're heavily into PPO practices where your adjustments on your UCR fees are over 20%, it's going to be hard. So that being said, you can still use the metric. Um, so first off, determine where you're at, right? And it's a very easy formula. Let's give you an example. Let's assume that in an 8-hour day, 8-hour clinical day, that your hygienist is there for 9 hours. They come in a half hour earlier to chart prep and make sure they're ready for the day, and they need to stay a half hour later. So it's 9 hours. Just to keep the math simple, let's say that they're getting paid $50 an hour. So that's 50 times 9 is 450. In a perfect world, they would be producing 3.3 times that $450. So let me pull out my calculator here. Um, let's see here, 450 times 3.3. So they're doing about $1,500 a day. Now there's, again, don't major in the minors here. Like I know I have people are going to reach out to me like, well, what about payroll taxes and what about the benefits? And yeah, okay, however you want to determine this number, determine it. But I'm just trying to talk to you at a high level. So if they can do 3.3 times their wages on a given day, then that's a win. But find out where you're at, right? Are you at 3.3? Are you at 1.8? I had a client that we developed our relationship about 6 months ago, and we looked at this number, and he was at 1.8. He's losing money in hygiene, and It's not good, it's not bad, it just is. So once we had that data, we started to work on ways to increase it. And I was just on a call with him this past week, and he's at 2.4. And you're like, wow, 2.4, that's not great. Well, again, it's all perspective. From 1.8 to 2.4 is really, really good, especially when you have five hygienists. He's got a big group practice, he's got five hygienists. So that's a lot of additional revenue and production. Now, are we satisfied with 2.4? No, but we'll eventually get it to the point where he's going to be in the 2.7, 2.8 range. So determine where you're at and set a goal to get to a certain point. I think 2.5 is where we ultimately want to be at a minimum. Depending on your location and your PPO service mix, 2.8 to 2.9 is a win. And if you're in a fee for service practice, if you're in a rural area where the hygiene wages haven't exploded yet, then yes, 3.3 is a great goal. So again, we're talking about revenue now. We're talking about production. The first thing we're looking at is, are we producing enough? So from a hygiene perspective, those are some basic metrics that you can be looking at to make sure you're producing enough. And again, let me just put a pin in it and remind you guys what we're talking about here. Am I overstaffed? That's the question that we're asking. So again, when we talk about am I overstaffed, we have to look at both revenue and we have to look at expenses. So we just unpacked the hygiene component of it. Let's now unpack the doctor component of it. And again, I'm just going to give you some general metrics to consider. A single practice owner doctor, when for every $100 that comes in, ideally, you want the dentist to be producing about 70%. So if you have an office that's doing 100 grand, if the ratios are set up correctly, 30 grand is coming from hygiene and 70 grand is coming from the doctor. Now, again, the reason I hate giving these metrics is because people will hear them and they'll be like, well, Jason said, and then they go back and they look at their numbers and they're a little off one way or the other and they tweak things accordingly. Like this is like a standard, right? But nobody really kind of falls into the perfect avatar standard. So, for example, what if you, as a founder doctor, have a super unique clinical skill set where you're doing a ton of major cases, big time surgeries, big veneer cases? If that's the case, then the percentages are going to be a little bit different. You might be doing 75% of office revenue, and the hygiene department might be doing 25%. Or what if you're in a situation where your hygiene ratio is not the 2-to-1 standard that we talk about all the time and coach on, but is 3-to-1, right? If you have three hygienists and you're the only doctor, and we've talked in the past about why you would do that. You're ramping up your hygiene department in an effort to bring on an associate, and I've talked about that on other podcasts. I'm not going to unpack that here, but then your numbers are going to be a little bit different. You might have you as the doctor might be doing 65% of revenue, and the hygiene department might be doing 35%. So again, 70% is a good standard to kind of start the conversation. If you're a super producer, you might be closer to 75%. If you have a hygiene department that has more than a 2-to-1 ratio, it could be closer to 65%. So take it for what it's worth. Don't yell at me that I'm giving you a number that you feel like is not relatable to you. Because I do get yelled at for that. So again, we already talked about hygiene. Now we're talking about doctors. So anywhere from 65 to 75%. What else should we think about from a doctor's perspective? How much should you be producing as a doctor? Again, it just varies wildly, but I'm going to talk about it from a founder perspective, founder owner, and I'm also going to talk about it from an associate perspective based on my own lived experience. If you're a founder, owner, experienced doc, and you have a decent skill set, you can do basic restorative, you can take out a tooth, you can graft a site, you can do some basic endo. You should be doing, anywhere from 4 to 5 grand a day at a minimum, right? And associates, again, assuming let's call them B level associates. And I don't mean that to be derogatory, but some associates can kill it, some associates. But on average, you should have associates that are doing about 3,000 a day, maybe $2,500 to $3,000 at a minimum, and negotiated with doing $5,000 a day or doing $2,500 a day, you're most likely going to have two columns scheduled and two assistants associated with that. So again, what we're talking about here is what should a typical doctor produce? Well, at a minimum, in my opinion, based on my own lived experience and all my coaching clients, if you're a founder doctor, it should be around 5 grand per day at a minimum. If it's an associate doctor, $2,500 to $3,000 per day at a minimum. If you're not there, no judgment, start to ask yourself some questions. Why am I not there? Is it my skill set? Is it my case acceptance? Is it I don't have enough patient demand? Like all of this data is not meant to make you feel good or make you feel bad. It's meant for you to ask better questions. So figure out where you're at. If you're not where you want to be, ask questions. And if you need help with those questions, if you need help with answering those questions, feel free to reach out. So we've talked about hygiene, we've talked about doctor. Now let's talk about front desk. So how many people do I need at the front desk? So now we're starting to pivot the conversation into wages. We talked about bringing in money based on hygienists as a provider and based on doctors as a provider. Again, just to make sure that we're all on the same page. Hygienists ideally bringing in 2.5 to 3.3 times their wages, depending on a litany of circumstances that we've already unpacked. Doctors bringing in $2,500 to $5,000 a day, depending on associate, owner, skill set, case acceptance, all of those things. And it's been my experience that if a doctor is going to work out of two columns and do at least $2,500 a day, they're going to need two assistants. And again, don't blow me up and being like, well, I do $5,000 a day with one assistant. Okay, cool. Let's awesome. I can't wait to celebrate you. But you're most likely doing 2.5, 3 hour procedures, low patient volume, high productivity, dot, dot, dot. I'm trying to speak to the masses here. So, and everybody's different. So we've talked about revenue. Now let's talk about expenses. Um, Expenses from a hygiene department perspective is if you can keep that ratio at a minimum of 2.5 all the way up to 3.3, you're going to be fine. From a doctor perspective, if you're going to hit those two, that range, associate versus owner doctor, 2,500 versus 5,000, and you have two assistants and two columns, you're going to be fine. Where a lot of times the wheels come off is when we start to talk about administrative teams. So let's talk a little bit about that. As a general rule, and again, I hate saying these general rules, but just so you're aware, as a general rule, there's lots of different ways to figure out um, how many administrative team members that I need. I have experienced it based on patient volume, right? How many appointments are we seeing on a regular basis? So if it is 20 appointments or less, typically one person at the front desk can handle that. If it's 20 appointments or more, typically you're going to need more than one person to handle that. And then you have to ultimately decide what are we doing in-house versus what are we outsourcing. And I've talked about this ratio before. It does resonate in a lot of situations, so I'll share it here. When I'm talking about are we overstaffed or are we understaffed, typically I'm looking at revenue per month per non-doctor employee. So let's unpack the situation that we just talked about. Let's say we have two hygienists. Let's say we have a doctor that has two assistants. And let's say we have two people at the front desk, right? So that is six non-doctor employees. If you are humming along the right way, you should be able, at a minimum, to produce $20,000 per non-doctor employee per month. So 6 employees times 20,000, that's $120,000. But you can also get on the other end of that scale and start to redline people and start to stress people out. And I have found that that typically comes around $25,000 per non-dentist employee. So at a minimum, just do the math here. Let's say this typical practice has two front desk, two hygiene, two assistant, one doctor. At a minimum, you should be producing $120,000 per month. You should be collecting $120,000 per month. At humming along, it's 25,000. So 25,000 times 6 is 150,000. So there's a big difference. 120,000 and 150,000. So if you're moving efficiently, if everyone's an A or B player, and if we have specific assigned responsibilities, checklists, people are wearing specific hats, like I'm the patient advocate, I'm the treatment coordinator, I'm the office manager, and they have roles and responsibilities associated with each of those tasks, and they're good A and B players, you should be producing 25,000 per non-dentist team member, right? So we started at 120, we've got to 150. Now let's take it up a notch. Let's say that we're doing 30,000 per non-dentist team member. So we have 6 team members, we're doing $180,000 a month. It's been my experience, both personally and in my coaching relationships, that when we get above 25K per employee per month and get closer to 30, that's not a cause for celebration. That's a warning sign that we're starting to redline the team. Okay. Now, again, if you have 6 A players and they are unicorns when it comes to doing their job, then you can start to touch $30,000 per non-dentist employee per month. But if we're trying to build an organization based on good core value fits that are A and B players, as we get closer to 30,000 per employee, per non-dentist employee per month, you start to see the signs of burnout. You start to see the signs of we're redlining the team. You start to see some things kind of fall through the cracks. You start to see some patients to get upset because they didn't get a call back, or I didn't know it was going to cost this, or all of these things. So when we're trying to ask ourselves, are we overstaffed? Use those 3 metrics as a gauge, again, for you to ask better questions. At a minimum, again, PPO practice, bread and butter practice, you do restorative, you do a little bit of endo, you do a little bit of surgery, maybe an Invisalign case here or there. At a minimum, $20,000 per non-dentist employee per month. A good, efficient role in practice, 25,000 per non-dentist employee per month. A practice that's starting to redline, you're going to experience some burnout, some things are going to start to fall through the cracks, 30,000 per non-dentist employee per month. That set of metrics will serve 80 to 90% of you. Who doesn't it serve? If you are an all-on X doctor that's cranking out 10 to 20 grand a day with 1 or 2 assistants, you're going to skew that metric. If you're doing a ton of aligners, you're going to skew that metric. If you are doing a ton of IV sedation and surgery, you're going to skew that metric. So I'm speaking to the masses here. I'm speaking to the 85% that have bread and butter general dentistry practices. Um, what other things do I want to share with you guys about am I overstaffed? Um, know your numbers, right? And I don't mean just what you produce and your new patients and your collections, but know what your current 2025 wage expenses are and know what they should be moving forward. So if you get online or chat GPT or what have you, um, a couple things that you're going to find out. The quote unquote success metric for wages is usually between 25 and 27% of revenue. And if you have a bread and butter PPO practice, if you're in that 25 to 27%, then high five yourself, right? Because you're in a good place. If you're north of that, then you need to start asking questions about why. And the two biggest questions that you need to ask yourself are, am I underproducing? And we just talked about some metrics for both hygienists and doctors to answer that question. And then the next question you ask is, am I overstaffed? And it's been my experience through my own growth journey and through the hundreds of coaching clients that I've had that they typically can produce enough to meet the requirements, but they have an excess amount of team members to do the work, specifically administrative work. And if you fall into that bucket, again, no judgment, it just is going to force you to ask better questions. Why does the number of people I currently have at the front desk feel overwhelmed and feel like they can't get it all done? And 99% of the time, the answer comes down to one of two things. Either A, A is probably not the right thing to say because I'm going to use A. Either number one, you have some C players on the administrative team, right? So we've talked about A and B players, and I'm not going to get into the weeds on what that means. But if you have one or two C players on your administrative team, two things happen. They just don't do what you need that particular position to do, right? So they're in a specific seat or they wear a specific hat and they're routinely not doing what they need to do because of an incompetency issue, because of a capacity issue, because of a core value issue, you name it. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is it's dragging energy out of your other people because they're making up for the C player's inadequacies. So, how do you deal with that? You have to confront the C player and you have to have a plan to either raise their game or free up their future. Right? Those are those are the two choices. Be crystal clear with what you expect out of these people. That's why I truly don't believe in not multitasking. I don't believe in multitasking either, but I truly don't believe in cross training as the norm. I truly believe in you are this position, you are this position, you are this position, and 90% of your day should be focusing on that position, right? You are the treatment coordinator. You are the patient advocate slash greeter. You are the office manager. You are the insurance coordinator. Like people wear different hats or they sit in different seats and they need to own that particular position. When we have this mindset of everybody does everything, which is a very common mindset, unfortunately, what ends up happening is one or two people are doing everything, and then there's a handful of other people that are doing nothing or just doing things at an inferior level. So, how do we coach up these C players? We have crystal clear expectations, what you guys have heard me talk to with rules of the house, core values, what seat are they in, what roles and responsibilities they have, what checklists are associated with those roles and responsibilities. And we're being super intentional about coaching them up or coaching them out. And when you put your head in the sand and when you hope it gets better and when you lie to yourself that I'll have the conversation on Monday when we get back from the weekend, you're negatively affecting so many different things in your life. You're negatively affecting your profitability. You're negatively affecting the culture and morale of your A and B players around the team. You're stealing, you're allowing this particular person to steal your time, your energy, your money. Because when you have C players on the team that are not being held accountable, that's exactly what they're taking from you is your time, your energy, and your money. And I've talked about this on another podcast, but if that is not enough to convince you to act, then instead of having the mindset of them stealing your time and energy and money, think about how they're stealing your kids' time and energy. You're like, well, what are you talking about, Jason? That doesn't make sense. Well, listen, it does make sense, right? Because when that C player is not doing their job, I can guarantee you're thinking about that at home, which is stealing your time and energy, but it's also stealing your presence with your family. Because even though you're sitting down at dinner, you're fooling yourself into thinking that you're listening to your kids talk about they're really consumed with the C player that's not doing her job, right? So they're stealing from your family time and energy, and they're stealing financially from your family. Because I don't, you can argue with me all day long, but if your profitability is at a certain level, and it could be better if you had better people on your team, or if you coached up the C players to become B players, then automatically you're having to be less consumed with work. It's simple math, right? If you make $300,000 a year, kind of doing status quo, you know, you're getting the results of the systems that you currently have in place. But if you did a little bit of extra work, if you had some accountability conversations, if you were structured a little bit more with checklists and seats and stuff like that, and that number turned to $400,000 a year, that automatically gives you the choices, the freedom to work less, to work less clinical days per week, or to put more money away so you can retire sooner, or any of these other things. So again, I'm kind of going on a tangent here, but I'm super passionate about this because I just see so much opportunity with dentistry and with dentists, and so much opportunity to grow people, to have a life, a balanced life. And more often than not, they're afraid to have uncomfortable conversations with people that are not doing what is expected of them. And was just having this conversation with a one-on-one client on Wednesday. What's today? This was yesterday. And when we choose not conversations, the only way I can describe that is you being selfish. And you're like, oh, Jason, what are you talking about? Me being selfish? Because here's why you're being selfish. When someone is festering in mediocrity in your practice and you're not talking to them, who suffers, right? The business is suffering because the patient experience isn't what it needs to be. Profitability isn't what it needs to be. They are suffering because they think they're doing a good job, but the reality is they're not. People are talking about them behind their back. I wish Mary would do her job. And maybe she's not doing her job because she's a bitch, but more than likely she's not doing her job because no one's given her honest and sincere feedback on how well she's doing, right? So the business suffers, Mary suffers, and the only person that really makes out here is you as the leader, because you have not had to develop the courage to go have this conversation because you're scared or because you're fearful of how it's going to end. So again, that's why you're being selfish. When you choose to not have these conversations, or you choose to even have these conversations superficially and you sugarcoat them and you never get to the point, if you know, you know, you're the only one that's benefiting here because you don't have to develop the courage to have this conversation. All right, I got to get off my soapbox. So hopefully what I've communicated here resonates with you guys. I just was really trying to give you a framework of, am I producing enough? Am I overstaffed? And most importantly, what to do when you suspect that you're overstaffed, how to start the ball rolling. So hopefully this helps, guys. Just had so many text messages and emails about this particular topic. So hopefully it helps. If you resonate with this material, please share it with somebody. If you want to get a little bit more clarity on anything I talked about, don't hesitate to reach out. My contact information is at thedentallighthouse.com. I love you guys unconditionally. Agape love. And I hope to talk to you soon. Later. Thank you. That wraps up another episode of the Dental Lighthouse podcast. You have a choice today. Choose to be a lighthouse. Lighthouses are powerful and steadfast. They are beacons of light for others to reference when life gets turbulent. Go out into the world today and become a lighthouse for someone. Give more than you get. True joy comes from serving others. Start today. I'm Jason Tenori, your host. Thank you for listening to the Dental Lighthouse podcast. For more information, podcast show notes, or links to anything that we have discussed today, please check out our website, thedentallighthouse.com. We would love to hear from you. If you would like to get on the show, please email us at podcast@thedentallighthouse.com.